So in case you don't know, every year there's this sort of pagan ritual carried out in Hollywood to celebrate another year of prosperity in the film industry. Essentially what happens is all of the Hollywood elites gather in this huge conference room and they all gather there to pay solidarity to their master, the king of Hollywood, the one and only king of Hollywood, King Oscar, the ultimate overlord. King Oscar then spends the rest of the evening rattling off his personal top picks of what the best films were that year, and everyone has to just watch and nod their head and go, oh yes, great one. You are, with your ultimate wisdom, you know the truth. There's a whole bunch of different categories. There's best leading male performance, and how could I forget best supporting male performance, and last but most certainly least, best sounds made by a film in that year. The nicest sounding sounds, I think that category is all about. And this was just a really retarded way of saying that I'm reviewing the best picture nominees. So sit down and be prepared to be amazed, because these are just the top level films and there's no disputing that they are the golden standard of cinema, and anyone else who thinks otherwise is idiotic, wrong, just a person who just loves Marvel films, like an idiot, a punter, just someone who only ever watches superhero films and action films. If you don't like those films, you're just a shithead. But on a more serious note, can we please make these films a little bit more easier to view? Preferably, it would have been nice if we'd had a decent chance to view these films before they were nominated, before the nominees were announced. They should make it a rule where you can only have your film nominated for an Oscar if you have a consumer-friendly distribution model. Just make it easier to see these films every fucking year. Every fucking year. Starting things off with Memento for Grandmas. I hadn't heard about this film at all until the nominees were announced. There's always that film that creeps in near award season that's clearly just been made to get nominated. That was definitely my perception of The Father going in, but I was surprised. It did have a few things going for it in its defence. It's a film about a man with dementia, the man played by Anthony Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins was obviously great, no one's going to dispute that. Moments of the film that were intended for me to feel sorry for his character were successful in doing so due to Hopkins. These scenes would definitely not have the same emotional resonance without him in the film. He's beyond capable of transcending whatever script he's working with, which brings me to my problems with the rest of the film. The script isn't very good. It felt to me like a GCSE drama play. Oh Dad, oh come off it, oh don't be silly Dad, oh come on, oh don't worry, oh you'll get better, oh don't worry, oh come off it Dad. It was actually based on a play, which I guessed was the case before looking it up based on the structure and format of the film. For the most part, it's one location, small cast. I can't speak for the play. Maybe the dialogue works better for that medium, but the script for this film felt very amateur and unimpressionable. It's the quality of script that belongs in a TV movie that your grandma watches on a whim. It's been nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay, which it absolutely does not deserve. I don't think it's translated well into film at all. The dialogue feels flowery and serviceable. The performances of the rest of the cast also suffer from this harsh play-to-film conversion. I can imagine them being more captivating when seeing them live on stage, but there's something about seeing them behind a camera that makes them feel utterly ordinary and unconvincing. This goes for Olivia Colman too, who's been nominated for this, Best Supporting Actress. She does nothing she has not already done many times before. She gives an average performance that any professional actor should be capable of doing. At this point we might as well throw in a performance from Peep Show. On a minor note, there are also two instances of very noticeable ADR lines edited in when characters had their heads turned away from the camera. I'll give you an example. I'm so frustrated at the world right now. God damn, I hate this! It's a small complaint, but it's not something I want to see in a movie on this level of professionalism. A redeeming feature that makes me a little more conflicted as to where I hold this film is the very purposeful usage of actors. I can't go into much more detail without spoiling the movie, but all I'll say is that there's a particular storytelling method used to depict dementia that's very clever and effective, and it makes the film stand out a bit more. Other than that niche little trick and obviously Hopkins' performance, the film still feels very serviceable and below average. It's nowhere near good enough to have been nominated, but again, it's the Oscars, what does that even mean? It's also been nominated for Best Production Design, which is a load of bullshit too. It has very few locations to work with, so they could have been more creative with the flat that most of the film is set in, but again, it's the factory default standard of production design. This is what exceptional production design looks like, not this Amdram shit. So Lakeith Stanfield is nominated for Best Supporting Actor for this, and not just Best Actor. Not sure how I feel about that. I'd say he was the lead in the film. It feels like a snub. Regardless, he deserves the nomination, and so does Daniel Kaluuya. The film's also been nominated for Best Cinematography and Original Screenplay. The cinematography wasn't bland or anything, but there's nothing about it that particularly struck me, seeing as how I can't recall anything outstanding in the way the film was shot. Original screenplay I'm more understanding of. A very tight narrative and script, no flowery dialogue. It's matter of fact, and hence the film feels very sincere. It's a solid true story movie that strives to tell it like it was, and does not shy away from the morbid hopelessness of the story. The way this film ended was way darker than I expected, as a lot of true story films these days have become very wishy-washy, trying to educate the audience on social issues or historical tragedies, but only in ways that are comfortable to digest. This is a bleak-ass movie, and I respect that. I don't like it as much as everyone else seems to. I think it could have been a little shorter and still packed the same punch. There were some repetitive scenes in the second act. Daniel Kaluuya felt like he was reaffirming the same point throughout multiple scenes, just with different dialogue. I suppose I lost interest as there weren't many themes to digest, rather just a faithful documentation of events. It's one of those films that comes together at the end, so I might like it a lot more on rewatch, but for now, ignoring all the Oscar buzz and political bullshit, I'd just say it's a solid film. This seems to be the champion horse for Best Picture winner. A lot of these nominees are slice of life, matter of fact films that are going for the documentary feel. No Madeland is a more surface level example of this, for lack of a better word, style. The central and singular theme of the entire film is blurted out at the beginning with one line of dialogue. It's a one-note film that never slows down to flesh itself out or help us get immersed in the world of the main character. Seeing how this film is all about home, it was crucial that we felt like we were living alongside Frances McDormand as she travelled around in her van. The editing did not allow for such immersion. It kept quick cutting through scenes which felt not only unnecessary but derivative of Terrence Malick's films. It was aiming for realism but instead came across like a music video made by a teenage girl. There's no originality in the presentation, a hollow montage rather than an in-depth exploration of the subject matter. There's not much thematic digging to be done. There's one basic theme that it struggles to expand upon, which might have been okay if it nailed the slice of life aspect. I think it was more intended to be viewed as an objective look at this particular lifestyle, but again, the editing fucked it, so it didn't feel like it had its own pulse. Whenever I thought things were about to get interesting, it would just montage over everything. The music was sappy and unoriginal. I've been hearing this mood of music for years now. I think someone did it well years ago, and everyone's been making empty copies of it since. Time to feel sad now. It's sad and profound, and it's all about life. Ultimately, this film felt like a severely lesser version of Leave No Trace, which came out a couple of years ago. That also has minimal themes and story beats, but it absolutely nails the matter of facts and unapologetic realism. Please watch that, it's honestly so much better. The two films even end with the same idea being portrayed by the closing shot, and Leave No Traces has so much more sophistication in the composition and blocking. Lean on Pete is also a superior film with similar themes. Frances McDormand is fairly good, I guess. Again, all of the depth and nuance is shaved off by the shitty editing. Slice of life movies have to stop and let themselves breathe, and this film never did that. Maybe that's because you need a heart to breathe. Shebang! The documentary feel was pretentious. Handheld camera, abrupt cuts, all that shit. The continuous shots weren't very impressive or complex compared to what we're now used to. Seriously, everyone's doing it right now, so you better have something impressive going on. It's been nominated for directing, cinematography, editing, adapted screenplay. Deserves none of them. And I don't really care much for Frances McDormand's performance either. Is this the only symbol brand in existence? Every symbol I've ever seen has the same stupid Zildjian logo plastered on it. Where are the other brands? Where are the rivals? Sound of Metal is fucking great, definitely worth the watch. I don't want to repeat myself too much, but essentially, everything that Nomadland and The Father fails at, Sound of Metal knocks out of the park. Fully fleshed out characters, naturalistic editing, cinematography, performances, naturalistic story, naturalistic everything. The sound design used to convey the lead character's death deafness was brutally convincing. It's got a really engaging opening that ties in well with the themes of the film. It took no time at all for me to get invested in the story. Riz Ahmed's performance. This is what an Oscar-nominated performance should look like. This is the bar. He's fucking great. Riz Ahmed's a G. He's good in everything I see him in. He's so humble. He's all about the characters and the storytelling. The authenticity in his conviction to the role shines right through. It's not just making the same stonewall face or shedding a tear here and there. This is a fully realised, nuanced, fleshed out, visceral performance with a vast attention to detail. Nothing pretentious, just some thick, juicy acting. No manipulative music. The handheld cinematography was much better utilised in this film. They didn't let the teenage girl who directed No Madeland anywhere near this. The subject matter forces the film to have a lot of scenes without dialogue, where things have to be communicated visually and the actors have to be more expressive in their performances. It makes the storytelling all the more subtle. It elevates the entire film. It's been nommed for original screen gay, editing, sound, Riz Ahmed for lead and Paul Rashi for supporting. Bear in mind I don't know how to pronounce that. All seem fairly justified. I don't have any issues with these.
The Trial of the Brooklyn Nine-Nine is a masterpiece.
No, it's not. I'm going to sound quite hypocritical here. I just made a video about how bad it is for true story films to be cheesy, and this is a true story film that is cheesy, but I liked it. It doesn't deserve to be nominated. I didn't expect that at all. Watched it a while back. I viewed it more as a cheesy courtroom drama rather than a triumphant true story film. Almost like I'd view a Daredevil episode, I guess. I found it very entertaining in that way, but I can fully get on board with the criticism of this film being cheesy when it shouldn't be. That's definitely the case, but you'll have a better time if you view it as a cheesy courtroom flick. Aaron Sorkin did a good job with the dialogue as always. The performances are a lot of fun. Sacha Baron Cohen was entertaining but could not get that accent down. He's been nominated for this. Honestly, I wish he'd been nominated for Borat too. I mean, not only is Borat a great performance, he's literally a cultural icon, but I digress. The ending to Chicago is particularly corny in a very dated, old-fashioned way. I mean, I enjoyed it, but it's not one of the best movies of the year. I mean, what the fuck? There's a lot to get out of Minari. First of all, it's a family drama and the family feels 100% real. You're in there with them through all that happens to them, living alongside them, mainly in the headspace of the young kid. The child actor in this movie absolutely smashes it. There's nothing unconvincing about his performance. We should always stop and appreciate the rare occasion when a child actor is actually good. It's a fairly slow-paced film, but it was entertaining from start to finish. And now that there's a film that has cinematography that actually stands out, it's not nominated for Best Cinematography. It's a film that never directly explains its themes by having a character monologue what the point of the movie is. All of the ideas are conveyed simply by the unfolding of events and how the characters react to each of them. The story plays out and you have to make of it what you will. From first viewing, there's some initial themes of adapting to not only Western culture, but to the Western economy, the differences and similarities between American and Korean living, such as attitudes towards work ethic and family life, and which of the two should take precedence over the other. But you don't really need to analyse anything to get a fulfilling experience from the film, because the characters are inherently entertaining on their own. They're all very likeable, and the grandma was very funny. Despite it having quite a laid-back pace, the story is constantly developing in interesting ways, even though fairly little is actually happening. You're always on board with the characters, you'll have an easy time empathising with them. It's just a really captivating film that I was interested in seeing before it got nominated. I was never bored by it, and I've got ADHD. People are really loving the score for this as well. I didn't pick up on it when I was watching, but I gave it another listen after I heard everyone going on about it, and yeah, it's very nice. Stephen Yeun has been nominated for Best Lead Actor. He isn't the lead. The young boy is really. Would have rather had the kid be nommed, he was awesome. It's been nommed for directing, original screenplay, original score, which are all definitely justified. The film has substantial quality in all three of those departments. Lastly, the grandma has been nominated for Best Supporting Actress, which I wasn't expecting, but I'm also very happy with. She was top tier, loved her. You should all watch Minari, and if you get bored by it, then you're probably a moron. This movie didn't feel like an Oscar nominee, which is a good thing. It had a completely different feel, it wasn't Oscar bait, it wasn't lukewarm, it didn't feel like it was tailor-made for a bunch of old farts. It just felt like a movie, something you might have seen regardless of the Academy Awards. It's been nominated for its feminist themes, and the fedora goes on, which would usually lead one to assume that it'd have some pandering men bad narrative, which isn't the case. All of the feminist stuff is coming from a sincere place. It's not subtly done, it's very overt, but it didn't feel like a PSA despite how preachy it was. I agree with all it has to say on the subject matter, but that doesn't mean it's profound. It's not particularly eye-opening or anything. I just see the whole thing as this fun, goofy revenge film, which I'd say is the best way to view it rather than putting it on a high pedestal of this deeply revealing expose of misogyny. It's very simplistic in how it tackles its themes. I'd say it comes over better if you just don't take it that seriously. It's been nominated for directing, original screenplay, and editing. The direction was very derivative of other long-running styles, and the film never came close to solidifying its own identity. Not only was the editing not great, but it was actually awful. There were numerous occasions where shots would cut way too abruptly during conversational scenes, making the interactions feel completely unnatural and rushed. This is the kind of error you learn to correct in film school. It's very distracting when you see it in mainstream media. The Academy knows fuck all about editing. This is like nominating a film that's shot out of focus for best cinematography. The score and soundtrack was overbearing to shit and took significance away from scenes rather than complementing them. Something about the sound mixing was off. A lot of dialogue felt like it was dubbed after the fact, which I don't think was the case. It just sounded strange. Carey Mulligan was cool. She carries the whole movie. A few of her line deliveries reminded me of Uma Thurman from Kill Bill. Carey Mulligan has on many occasions proven herself to be one of the greatest actresses working today already. Her performance in Shame is absolutely phenomenal. I'm fine with her being nominated for this. When the film wasn't a revenge plot, it turned into a sappy, boring romantic comedy from 2010. The rest of the cast do feel like they'd belong in that kind of movie, as that's the quality of performance they each gave. Christopher Mintz-Plasse was fucking awful. Terrible casting. You may think that all of the men in the film are portrayed in this straw man argument kind of fashion, which I can understand, though I don't think that myself. I'm uncertain as to whether this film is good or not, but it's not something you need to prioritise at all. I've already made a big boy video essay on Mank in which I go in depth on what I thought it was all about. This is my favourite film of 2020. I think it's one of David Fincher's best films, or at least one of his most interesting. He's never made anything like this before, and I love when directors who are known for a particular style do something completely incongruent with the rest of their filmography. However, I haven't seen the same level of enthusiasm towards Mank anywhere else. It's a very inaccessible story that you need to go into with a knowledge of specific facts and historical events. With a vague knowledge of how Citizen Kane was written, I was able to have a decent understanding of the film on first watch, but there's so much more to unpack, so many references to historical events and figures. It's a great film for a deep dive, and it's a very fascinating story once you have all the pieces. I had fun learning about William Randolph Hearst in particular. On an objective level, this film's near perfect. Production design, costume design, cinematography, editing, sound editing, lighting. It's impeccable in all those departments. It looks gorgeous. The pastiching of Citizen Kane is done very purposefully and comprehensively. It isn't just a cheap aesthetical gimmick. There's an overwhelming attention to detail in how the filmmakers achieved the look. They didn't just make a normal film and then put a black and white filter over it in Final Cut. They went about the entire production incorporating this style, planting its roots deep within the DNA of the movie. David Fincher is a master of film conversations, and Mank, if nothing else, is a glorious showcase of how transcendent his ability has become. There's one scene in particular that takes place at a dinner party that's one of the best dialogue-driven scenes ever made. Charles Dance was also great. I always like seeing him appear in films and TV shows where he utterly dominates the rest of the cast. Mank has fared very well with the nominations. It's got directing, sound, cinematography, music, makeup and hairstyle, costume and production design, but strangely nothing for original screenplay. This is without a doubt the best screenplay of 2020. It's one of the most well-written movies I've seen out of the recent years. Gary Oldman has been nominated for Best Leading Actor, which he obviously deserves. I still hope Riz Ahmed takes it home though. Amanda Seyfried was nominated for Best Supporting Actress. She was solid in the movie, but I don't think it was a great performance. There are probably plenty of much finer performances from 2020 that could have done with a nomination instead, but again, who the fuck cares? And there we have it. the Oscars. Here's how I'd rank them. Here's from worst to best. And as always, this review is shot chronologically, so this isn't the same time for me where I did the intro. This is a completely different timeline. This is like 10 days after. Sound of Metal, Minari and Mank are the important ones to see here. Those are the most essential ones. They are actually great films. This is always how it is with me in the Oscars. There's always like 2 or 3 that I genuinely think are brilliant. If I had to pick 8 films that were the best of the year, I haven't seen that much this year, but I'll do it anyway. I'd keep those 3. I'd throw in I'm Thinking of Ending Things, Devil All the Time, To Five Bloods by Spike Lee, Wolf Walkers, and fuck it, the most recent SpongeBob movie. At this point, that was better than a lot of the stuff on this. That should be the take-home point for this video. The new SpongeBob movie is better than these 5 movies. You know, Judas and the Black Messiah could stay in the 8 best pictures, actually. I don't know, I'm not sure. Who cares? It doesn't fucking matter. It does not matter. You always get reeled in because like part of you likes the whole game show version of shit and like the simplistic version of life. Like, what are your top 10 fucking favourite sci-fi movies? Again, I haven't seen that many films from 2020. I'm still catching up from 2019 films. I have a watch list and it just keeps growing. There's so many films that get added to it all the time. It's never shrinking, it's just always fucking growing. And then instead of actually watching all the cool shit that's on there, I go and watch films like Greenland and Wonder Woman 1984 for content, because it's funny to review shit things. Well, it's funny to you apparently. Not really funny on this end. See the pain in my eyes. Thanks for wanking. Thanks for watching. What are your thoughts on the Oscars? Let me know in the comments. I'd like to know. I'd like to see. No, I don't. I don't fucking care. Subscribe to die.